What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online show. Zach Abolverdi, Nick Torre here. Got one scrimmage in the books, second one on Saturday, and then we'll be 1 week away from the orange and blue game. It's coming on fast, and we're looking forward to it as we near the end of spring camp. It's been a quick one, Nick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't seem quick. You had 2 practices and then spring break. But yeah,
It just goes by.
it does fly by, and Florida does a really good job. So shout out to Matthew Hutchinson and Rick Hurtado. They do a really good job of giving us availability. We've got a ton of interviews to sort through. So even after spring is done, we'll have a bunch of preview content for the spring game. And even after spring is done, we'll have football content to keep you satiated.
Yeah, all through April, all through May. I think we can stretch some of those interviews even into June, Nick.
June,
got to keep farming.
We'll be getting finishing up with college baseball in June, and then July SEC Media Days. Looking forward to that out in Texas, welcoming in the Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners.
One of 2 trips to Texas for the Gators, or at least for some of the Gators this year. For Billy, that is. Got to imagine Graham will be there. He wasn't at SEC Media Days last year. So he'll go to represent. He was on Paul Feinbaum this week, talking about the team, talking about camp. So we'll get into what we learned from the first scrimmage. We will preview the second scrimmage and just kind of discuss the latest from spring camp. As Nick said, we've got more players and coaches this week. Plenty to talk about. But before we get into it, Nick, let's get into one of the hot button topics right now. K-Dot and J. Cole. Who are you giving the early edge to in this battle?
J. Cole.
Easy.
J. Cole.
Easy.
I gotta listen to what is it called? Might Delete Later. Is that what his new project was called? I was listening to it. I just saw it come out now. I don't know what I was doing all morning. Just saw it come out. So as I was waiting on Zach to finish up and get ready, I was starting the J. Cole's new project. But listen, I'm a huge J. Cole fan. I like Kendrick. Weird beef there.
Yeah.
Unless Kendrick's coming out with some new music and you just wanted to stir it up and get your name in the headlines.
Well, that worked. But he better come back with more than like 3 bars directed at Cole, because he just dropped 3+ minutes directed at this guy. I'm all for it as long as it's healthy, as long as it's doesn't cross the line. I'm here for the competition, So shout out to those guys giving us some hip hop to enjoy. So we got some scrimmage to enjoy this past week as the Gators were in the swamp for the first time. And before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to myperfectfranchise.net. If you are ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. And as we mentioned, the Gators back on the grass at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, Florida Field, Steve Spurrier, Florida Field, should we say. And we learned a lot. We didn't get to obviously see anything. There was no viewing period as well. Will be no viewing period on Saturday for the second scrimmage too. But as Nick and I always do, work on the phones, hitting up our sources, figuring out what happened from that scrimmage. We also got to speak with Billy afterwards, so he gave us some insight as well. Don't want to give away all the juice here on this show, but we will talk about some of the things that we had in our intel report. Nick, as you think back to last Saturday, we're already here now getting ready for the second scrimmage, but what were some of the things that jumped out at you from that first one?
Yeah, I think one, it's a feel-good story. You know, Billy Napier mentioned that it might not get written about, but we talked to Tyreek Norwood, who is a 6th-year construction management. I guess it's not even like searching for a degree. He's in a graduate program. He's already got a certificate and is working on a master's. It's a great story, and Tyreek Norwood's not a guy who's a name that you might know, or not a guy that might play 50 snaps, 20 snaps this year. But when a 6th-year walk-on coming off of an ACL injury gets an interception, and you see or you hear about the team embracing a walk-on for having a big moment in a scrimmage, I think that's a heartwarming story. Other than that, I think the defense is kind of winning. Won the scrimmage is basically what I was told. Early on in spring, you think the defense might have a leg up, but I think that's encouraging, especially after the defense that we watched last year. You can always get into spring, well, if the defense had a good scrimmage, does that mean the offense sucks? Or if the offense does really well, does that mean the defense sucks? I think if we're looking back at last spring, I would advise, encourage, demand Florida to script something different than last year. Hey, don't let Lane Kiffin troll you about, a single-digit scoring game in your spring game. Script it in a way that is entertaining. But I think the defense is playing well. I wrote about the secondary, which I think is really, really athletic, and it has improved a lot. And it's a defense that's playing well without Shamar James, Derek Wingo, Manny Nunnery, or Miles Graham playing at linebacker. So I think Florida's done a good job adding depth to a unit that really needed depth. Yep. And then there's some younger guys in the secondary that I think are stepping up, in Jakeem Jackson, Aaron Gates, Sharif Denson. So I think there's a lot to look forward to in the second close scrimmage, and then in the spring game coming up in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Nick, you mentioned it. It was, a strong day for the secondary. Some interceptions were had. I think Devon Moore had the play of the day, and really good for Florida to see him not only making plays like that, but if you listen to him and Billy, he's finally healthy, like healthy. Nothing nagging, nothing lingering, nothing holding him back. And that's not been the case really for his first 2 years on campus. Had a season-ending shoulder injury in 2022. And then last year, had a concussion, had a sickness, had another injury that came up during the year and forced him to miss some time. But, man, when he's been on the field and he's been healthy or healthiest, he's been Florida's best corner. And that's just straight up the PFF grades say it. He's had their highest coverage grade last season. He finally got a start against Arkansas over Jalen Kimber, and now he's going to start there full time. So knock on wood, if he can stay healthy, that is going to help shore up Florida's secondary as much as Asa Turner, Aaron Gates, and some of these other players as well. But obviously, when you have guys that make plays on the defensive side of the ball, that means there's going to be some sore spots on offense. I think Graham Mertz did some good things. Obviously, he connected with Shamir DK on several passes, including a long touchdown on Saturday. We've written about that at Gators Online, about how they've kind of reunited and rekindled their connection and really picked up where they left off from Wisconsin. That was a positive. Not as great of a day for DJ, which we can get into. But as you were pointing to, Nick, the need for points and some excitement on offense in the spring game, I think Mertz and Shamir are going to have a huge hand in that, if that's what we get to see on April 13th. Yeah,
and we've talked about it a little bit, but Graham, lobbied for Florida to go after DK. They have I think when we spoke to Graham, it was Graham, didn't even know how many passes he had thrown to DK. So it's almost interesting too, the relationship, because DK's in the same spot Graham was last year, learning the plays, learning who everyone is. But now you have a guy who's already been there and can say, hey, this is just what we used to call it at Wisconsin. And it's almost like a cheat sheet, spark notes before the exam. Being okay, well, I know what that is. Okay, it's this route. It's just called something different. So I think that's helped Graham and DK to get on the same page and help DK get caught up to speed. I think there's a clear 3 at receiver with Khalil Jackson, Trey Wilson, and DK. And I think we keep saying that. We've seen it, the way reps play out. We hear it from sources when we're talking to people about what we don't see at practice. And fans, I guess, don't want to hear it, but Andy Jean's still hurt.
Yeah,
has been since the second scrimmage. Aiden Mizell is coming on. But it's a room. It's a room that I think clearly has 3 standouts through spring, in a room I think Florida will look to upgrade in the transfer portal. And that doesn't mean that Andy Jean is a bust or that Aiden Mizell is a bust. It just means that there's 3 guys that are standing out. That room is what it is. And Eugene Wilson's a special player, and I think they need to add somebody else to the room.
And we got to hear from Jaquavion Frazier's this week, and we heard about Marcus Burke from Billy Gonzalez. I think that those would be the next 2 of that tier, probably number 4 and number 5. I don't know who would be 4 and who would be 5, but I think that that's kind of the pecking order there at receiver. And Billy Gonzalez did give some props to Marcus Burke, saying that he's played every single position in spring, and he's sometimes within one practice, he'll play the X, Y, and the H. And I think in the scrimmage on Saturday, he said he had about 3 downfield catches and made some plays. But, we've seen this from Burke before, and we've seen it in the spring. And as Billy said, he has to continue to show that, continue to show up, continue to be consistent. The opportunity is there for him, and he's more than capable. He's got the ability. I think that he is probably, the potential might be there for him, maybe the most out of everybody in that second tier. But it's clear that, Frazier's is still going to be a part of that receiver rotation. And like you said, Nick, I think Mizell is the one of the underclassmen, those freshmen and sophomores. Mizell is the guy right now that's, the most ready, I think, to make an impact. And that's simply because of the work that he's put in. He's put on some weight and had a great spring, but also, like you mentioned, Andy Jean has just been out since the second practice, and that's holding him back. And that's going to be something that hurts his development. Obviously, he'll have fall training camp to be able to earn some more playing time. But I think we've learned a lot about the receiver spot through camp, and that was certainly one of the question marks. You lose Ricky Pearsall. He doesn't get talked about as much, but remember, they also lost Caleb Douglas. He had a season-ending injury, so you had already adjusted to life without Douglas last year, but he was still another starting receiver that you lost. So, I think we've got some answers at quarterback and at wide receiver, but one of those answers at quarterback, Nick, is that we clearly have kind of found out where DJ is at, all the great things that he's done, and then things that he still needs to work on. The great things that he's done is pick up the playbook and retain information. Graham basically said, hey, he doesn't get stumped in meetings. They'll ask him stuff, put him on the spot. There's not verbiage or language that kind of throws him off. And he credited Napier's system as kind of being quarterback friendly and easy to learn. And he said DJ's done a great job with that. But then he's also had some adversity in practice. This is the first time that he's been on a football field in a while, and things haven't been easy or come easy to him. And, he threw a pick early on in the scrimmage that was picked off by Moore. And as Billy said after the scrimmage, that was good for him because it was, he didn't have he said basically he needs to improve his poker game, being a Texas native, and, learn how to fold the hand when you don't get a good hand dealt, or just deal with the loss and go to play the next hand, play the next play. And that's something that he's going to learn, which is typical with true freshmen, especially early enrollees.
Yeah, you see it a lot in players like of DJ Lagway's caliber. I'll go back to like Chris Rainey. You throw on Chris Rainey highlights from Lakeland, and he would run 35 yards the wrong way because he could make people miss. And then he would end up running for like a 40-yard gain. He'd run 115 yards because he's running around sideline to sideline backwards to make people miss. If you cut on DJ Lagway highlights, he's doing some of that because he's the best player on the field.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for freshmen to realize. And then you'll see it when quarterbacks go from college to the NFL. Those windows that you're throwing into, which used to be like this in high school, get a little bit smaller in college, and then you're throwing into windows that are just a little bit bigger than the actual football you're throwing to once you get to the NFL. So it's going to be an adjustment for DJ. It's an adjustment for every player, regardless of position. When you are the best player on a high school field and just simply flat out more athletic than everyone, you try things and do things because it works. DJ's big. He's 6'4", 6'3.5", 240. But there are linebackers who are 6'3", 240, who are just as fast as him in the SEC. So you're going to have to learn when to tuck it and run it, when to, like Billy Napier says, listen, sometimes throwing a ball into section H, row 8 is the best play to make. Giving a fan a souvenir is better than running and taking a hit or trying to force a ball into coverage and throwing an interception. And it's going to take a while for that to mentally click because you've been doing it for 19 years, 18 years, 15 years, however long DJ's been playing quarterback. That's what's worked, and it's just not going to work at this level. And that's just a natural progression, natural growing pains to go through.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the second scrimmage here shortly and what we want to see and some things to watch for. But certainly DJ's performance from scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2 and how he does will be something that we'll monitor. Final thing here before we get into the second scrimmage and preview that is we also learn some things on the coaching side. Some things significant, some not so significant, but information nonetheless. One of them being Florida's new eyes in the sky. For the first 2 years of Napier's tenure, Jay Bateman and Darnell Stapleton were the two coaches that were in the coaches box during game and not on the field. So their two replacements, Ron Roberts and Jonathan DeCosta, respectively, are going to be the guys that take those roles. Napier revealed after the scrimmage that those guys were upstairs. Communication was good, he said. Everything was good on the headset. And I think Roberts obviously makes a lot of sense given his background and his role with this defense that he would be upstairs. Was curious to see maybe if Callaway would go upstairs for two reasons. One, because of his new role and being able to give them another set of eyes upstairs. But two, Nick, as you know, there is the new rule now with player to coach communication in the helmet. You can have one player on the field that the coach can talk to and relay plays just like the NFL. And I say that because prior to that, for the last season, Callaway was on the field signaling in the play calls from the sideline. I don't know how much Florida's going to do that moving forward, or how much of that responsibility he will still have. So thought maybe he might go upstairs, but he will still continue to be on the field, and they will have their second offensive line coach up in the box. And probably they feel this, while there's a need for two offensive line coaches that he feels in, obviously practice and development, they don't feel like maybe they need to on the field during games. So DeCosta will be up there. And Ron will be upstairs, which I think makes a lot of sense for Austin, Nick.
Yeah, I think the conventional thought that I would have is if you're going to have, like, how much are you coaching up tight ends, during a game? So my thought was, if you're going to have Russ as an offensive coordinator, put him up in the box, let him see, the full 22 on the field. It's a better view for that, or have somebody doing that. I don't know that you will. I think the rule with the radio, the one-way communication, is still proposed. It's been recommended, needs to be voted on.
Yeah, it's not official yet.
Yeah, it's not official yet, but teams,
they're practicing like it will be.
yeah. It just makes sense with the sign stealing. Listen, I'm a baseball guy. If I can steal your signs, that's on you. Now, don't do what like the Yankees and the Astros did. Don't have some dude in Groucho Mark disguises on the sideline on Saturdays. But I think it's part of the game. It's part of like gamesmanship. If we can steal signs, if you're not disguising your signs well enough, then we can steal them. Then that's on you. It's a lot harder to do that if you're going to do radio communication. And I think it's smart for the NCAA to go to that. I think it's smart for Florida to practice that way. So I think that's a benefit. I wonder how it works. And I've kind of asked Billy Napier, like, how does that work? Who can talk to the quarterback or the linebacker? Do you have a coach running over and grabbing a headset? But I think that'll be smart. And then the one thing I'd be interested in is, what does it look like? Does DJ have two helmets? Because you can only have one person on the field with the radio. Yeah. What if you wanted to bring in a 2 quarterback set system scheme play? Like, hey, let's not get penalized for having 2 guys on offense, not wear the same jersey number, but wear the same radio helmet. And hey, like, here's your other helmet without a radio in it.
That's crazy to think about. That is, you got to give your backup QB a second helmet in the event that he's in a 2 quarterback package.
Yeah, I might be getting my ahead of myself. Call it PTSD from some of the logistics penalties we saw last year.
Or from the John Brantley, Trey Burton, Jordan Reed era, when he had 3 quarterbacks on the field at once.
Well, Jeff Driscoll, Jacoby Brissett, when they were just like, listen, first play of the season, you're both going out there. And I think it was actually Brissett was like a lined up a receiver. But yeah, it's just thinking about that kind of stuff. That's thinking about a rule that's not even in place yet, and potential violations of the rule. But yeah, it's interesting. I will be interested to see who is up and who is down all season. And that's something that can be fluid. Last year, I think it was Bateman and Stape. So it makes sense that, the guys that replace them go up. I don't think that's much of a change. But I do like that Austin's still down. Austin's super high energy. Not that Ron Roberts isn't. But Ron Roberts being a little bit more of a veteran, having those eyes in the sky, and to be able to give Austin more information as, he's calling the defense and calling plays.
Now, while we also learned about who's where during the scrimmage and obviously where they will be during the games, we also learned a little bit more about Russ's involvement on offense as it's expanded beyond just coaching the tight ends. And we kind of knew that. We kind of figured that. We'd seen some of that in the viewing periods that we've seen in camp this spring. But hearing from Graham Mertz and hearing from Billy after practice, or after the scrimmage, should I say, it's clear that he's got more of a role there. And in hearing from Graham, he kind of revealed that Russ Callaway is now sitting in on the quarterback meetings and has picked Mertz's brain about how he likes to read plays. He says that they've changed some things. They've changed plays and adjusted plays to his liking. And then Mertz and Jaquavion Frazier's, they both also revealed that Callaway is like the guy that leads the offensive unit meetings for the whole offense, and kind of addresses the group, gets them fired up before they go out in the practice field, and is leading the charge there. We also learned that Callaway called some plays in the scrimmage, which is not really a surprise or anything that's a shock. He probably did that at some point last year. Billy, one thing that Billy has done, and he's talked about this, is in scrimmage settings, he does give his assistant coaches an opportunity to call plays. And then in the spring game, he will give the assistant coaches the play calling duties on both sides and on both teams. So he doesn't call any plays during the spring game. So we will see Russ dialing it up on April 13th. But more than that, because Billy is still going to be the play caller overall. But more than that, it is clear that this isn't just a title, folks. Like he's got named co-offensive coordinator, and there's more responsibilities that have come with that, i.e. being in the quarterback meetings, i.e. leading the offensive unit meetings, i.e. calling more plays in practice. They are grooming him, as Napier said that they would.
Yeah, and we mentioned, right after the season when Napier did not make Russ Callaway the offensive coordinator, say he's going to call plays. I think we kind of explained it here as like you're putting yourself into a corner if you do that, and you haven't seen him do it outside of when he did it at Samford, and what he ran at Samford is starkly different than what Florida has run, recruited to run, and practiced to run in games for 2+ years now. And we saw that with Will Muschamp. Like by the time Kurt Roper came in to run the spread, you had recruited for 4 years to run pro style, and you didn't have the pieces to run that. So I think to throw the baby out with the bathwater, it wouldn't have benefited Florida to just a full send change. So I think if you had named Russ the offensive coordinator and said he's going to call plays and then tried it in the spring and it didn't work, well, now you have to fire him. You can't demote him. It's a knee-jerk move. I think to make him the offensive coordinator was because there were NFL teams inquiring about his services, and there were going to be other opportunities for Russ. So I think getting him more involved, I think he's collaborating more. He was involved in red zone packages and red zone game planning last year. So I think getting Russ more involved this spring is more of a test and see, hey, can you do it? Billy Napier's on record saying that he wants to continue to call plays. I think he knows at some point he will hand that off to somebody. Will that be in 2024? I don't know. I lean towards no, but I do think it's more of a collaborative effort, and Russ will have more input this year than he had last year.
No doubt. So we'll switch gears now and start looking ahead to Saturday and the second scrimmage in the Swamp. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide better care for his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And as we've mentioned, Gators back at it on Saturday. That will be practice number 11 overall for the Gators. So we're getting down. We'll be 1 week away from spring ball, and they'll be right back. 1 week away from the spring game, and they'll be right back in the Swamp a week later. So they've had a chance now to spend a week kind of looking at that first scrimmage, addressing some things. Billy did say that the final 2 weeks of spring camp was going to be critical in the sense of they've installed basically 80% of their playbook, and there's now not as much teaching and more refining, and they've kind of specified things that they want guys to work on. So we'll see how that shows up in the scrimmage. But what are some things that you want to hear or see and try and find out once this thing takes place?
I want to see points. like last year, the defensive struggle did not allow for a lot of optimism coming out of spring camp. It opened you up to being trolled a lot. I think you're in a better place with Graham Mertz. I think you're in a better place in the secondary. There's just things that you need to see cleaned up. Tackling is one. I think Will Harris and Ron Roberts have done a really good job coming in and injecting emphasizing the need to be exemplary tacklers. You can't just be okay. You can't want to do it sometimes. You have to want to tackle when you're playing tackle football. And it got to a point last year where you were questioning the want to of guys on defense to tackle more so than, hey, can they? So I think that's something we see it every day. The start of individual drills, the entire secondary is tackling, not just donuts. They're tackling players, people holding pads onto pads. You're trying to keep it as safe as possible, but you can't replicate tackling just the way that practices are scheduled or with safety in mind. You're not, doing Oklahoma drills every day and tackling full speed.
Shout out to Teddy Foster, though.
Yeah. Shout out to Teddy. Low man wins. Got low on Eugene Wilson. But that's the kind of, I think, identity that Roberts, Armstrong, Harris are trying to create with the linebackers in the secondary. Like the big men can fall on you. They can tackle, but you need to be able to tackle in space. And that falls on the safeties, nickels, corners, and linebackers.
Yeah, I think this is a key scrimmage and a key moment for depth purposes and guys defining their roles. I think across the board on both sides, the coaches at this point probably have a good idea of who their starters are going to be. But what is their rotation going to look like at certain positions? Who are going to be the guys that they can count on? And then how much can they count on them? How many snaps can they give them? What packages or things can they put on their plate? Are they just kind of sub-package guys? I think that some of that is going to continue to get defined here with Saturday's scrimmage. And, Nick, you mentioned and you wrote about it at Gators Online that the three receivers that have kind of separated themselves from the pack. I think that this is also important for that second tier of guys to start showing up, whether that's Marcus Burke, whether that's one of the freshmen, Aiden Mizell. As Florida goes back into the portal for the spring, and we anticipate probably to go find another receiver, the guys that show what they can do this spring and in these scrimmages, this is your time to carve out your role because, it's not that after this they'll write anybody off, but if you haven't shown or earned this playing time once you get to the end of spring, it's going to kind of be hard to do that in fall camp because you've already got your starters pretty much established. So those guys stepping up, the younger receivers, is there anybody that makes some plays or emerges or earns more playing time? DJ obviously is somebody that we're going to want to hear how he does. And then I think across both lines of scrimmage, again, I think the starters and the first team guys are pretty apparent on offensive line and defensive line. Who is stepping up at the second and third string up front? Who are the guards? Is Bryce Lovett continue to make the progress that we keep hearing that he's made? How much does Rod Kearney, continue to cross train and get some looks at both center and guard? And how well does he play with those opportunities? What are we seeing from the guys like Jamari Lyons, Kelby Collins, some of these young guys that they're trying to develop on the defensive line? These practices are priceless for those guys. So I think that, we might not necessarily get stats or get plays that shows how much those guys did. But if just simply going out there and performing well and getting another scrimmage-like setting is going to be beneficial for this group. So we all know that Florida's got to get better along the line of scrimmage. And these are the practices and the moments where you do that in the offseason.
And you're missing Austin Barber, Cam Waits. So you're getting a lot more Devon Manuel, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon,
Fletcher Westfall, Caden Jones. Yeah, these are big
thrown into the fire. I still think you need another interior offensive lineman. I don't know that they want to move Rod Kearney long term, but like Jake Slaughter is proven to be a guy. Is like take your Sharpie out. That's your starting center, barring injury. Keep knocking on wood for you there, Zach. But barring injury, the Ocala native is like going to be your starting center. I think he played really well after the season opener. And you got to find a way to get your best five. And I think you need to start building that continuity with those five, whether that's going to be Bryce or if it's going to be Damian George or if it's going to be Rod Kearney at right guard. I think you've got a pretty good idea of 4 out of the 5 spots with Barber, Dixon, Najee Harris, Slaughter, and you're trying to find who's that 5th piece. And I think they will go into the portal to find if they can. Again,
it's all about what's available. Yeah,
you're not shopping at Neiman Marcus in the transfer portal when you're looking for offensive linemen. I think everybody is looking for help on the offensive line. And again, in the transfer portal, which opens in 10 days, April 15th, open from the 15th to the 30th, you can't go shopping in the SEC, supermarket either. Cannot transfer SEC to SEC at this point and be available for the 2024 season. That's an SEC rule, not an NCAA rule, and the NCAA is not enforcing anything right now. So that's just the SEC not wanting to cannibalize each other in the spring portal window. Another thing I want to see real quick, punt return. Like TJ Abrams missed his punt return, kick return. TJ Abrams missed the first spring camp, first spring practice, or scrimmage, excuse me. But like Tank's a guy I think you can get with his speed. I mean, he's a little undersized. He's 5'9.5". Shout out to Florida using half inches and quarter inches on the roster, but 5'9.5", 170 pounds, like a little light, but certainly has the speed. I don't know that he is ready. Maybe you probably have to be more gadgety with him on offense. But you can throw him on special teams. He can punt return, he can kick return, and that speed's a difference.
Definitely a difference. And another guy that made a difference in the first scrimmage and kind of want to see if that carries over to scrimmage number 2 is Pup Howard. He was one of Florida's leading tacklers in the scrimmage, really made the most of his opportunity at linebacker because the Gators have Shamar James and Derek Wingo both in non-contact jerseys. They've been that way all spring, so they're not able to go through the scrimmage portion of practice and when they do teamwork and 11-on-11. So Pup is getting a lot of play and a lot of reps, and I think that he's a guy that is going to challenge for a starting job at some point in 2024, whether that's, I don't know if he'll open the season as a starter, but I think before the year's over, he's probably going to be playing starter minutes. I think he has the potential to be that good, and would be great for Florida if that shows up again on Saturday. So as we get out of here, as we always love to do, we have to dedicate the last 5 minutes of the show to Florida baseball, as they are looking for an undefeated week. I mean, I think if you talk to Kevin O'Sullivan, he would like to just go to Missouri and come back with a series win. I think that would be enough for him. But I also think that he would like to see his baseball team show up and take advantage of the fact that they got a win on Tuesday against Florida A&M, their first midweek win since February. So it's Been a while.
Yeah.
Since that happened. And now, after yet another weekend series win last weekend at home against Mississippi State, they're continuing to get it done, but they've yet to have a sweep in SEC play. So, Nick, they had a 5-win week in February when they beat North Florida, beat Columbia. But since then, no undefeated weeks for the Gators, but I think a chance to do it this weekend at Missouri.
Yeah, listen, winning road games in the SEC is hard. It's cold in Columbia, but if you are the number 6 team in the country, this is a series that you can sweep. And I went back last week, was talking about how Florida has a really tough month coming up on the weekends. And if you could win 5 out of 6 or 4 out of 6 against or last weekend at home and then against Missouri this weekend, that you'd be in a really good spot. Florida took care of business, won 2 out of 3 last week. If you can get a sweep this week, a 4-0 week, that's going to be huge, because you have coming up South Carolina, at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas, Tennessee, 4 really, really tough series where those 12 games, like 6-6 would be awesome in those 12 games. So getting as many wins right now at Missouri as you can. It's a sweepable weekend. Missouri's an older team, but they're really struggling. I think they're 1-8 in SEC play. And I think some people talking to the guys at D1 Baseball thought Missouri might be a team that wins 2, 3, 4 SEC games all season long. You don't want to be one of those 2, 3, or 4 teams that they beat.
No. And then we got a question from Brandon. He wants to know about potentially moving Brody. Or moving Shellman, should I say.
Yeah, so Florida is looking at options. Like, third base is open. Dale Thomas has struggled. The problem with Florida when they've and I'll try to finish this quickly, but the problem with Florida is the guys who have gotten a chance haven't done anything with their chances. Armando Albert's gotten 2 starts at third base. He has a throwing error in both of those games. He was 0 for 4 or 0 for 3 when he got a chance to start on Tuesday against FAMU. It's tough. Mentally, it's tough when you're a bench player and you're only getting pinch hit opportunities or you're only getting spot starts. It's tough to not press when you get that pinch hit, because you don't know when your next at-bat's coming. You don't know when your next start's coming. So you have to make the most of it. And it's much easier said than done. Hey, just relax. If you're pressing, you're not going to perform. Much easier for me, 35 years old, with no at-bats coming, to tell somebody who's 18 to 22 years old, hey, don't press in that situation. Much easier said than done. So the bottom line is the spot at third base is open. Spot in left field's open. You've got Michael Robertson, Jalen Guy. Neither of them have been able to even take the center field job. So they're not playing well enough to lock down their position in center field, which would then maybe open up a spot in left field. So Florida will continue to tinker with that. Tyler Shelna is playing out of position in left field. Moving him to third base is an option. We're going to still see that. I don't know that Brody Dene, obviously had a great night against FAMU. I have not seen enough from his bat against better pitching to think that he's going to be an option that you can throw in the DH. Luke Heyman's still going to be in the lineup at DH. Jack Caglianone's going to play first base Friday, Saturday. And Tanner Garrison, you just need him to hit his weight. Just hit 190 to 220. And what he does defensively is all you need. He's stealing pitches. He's stealing strikes. He's stealing outs for you defensively, and the team needs that behind the plate. Third base, left field, open. Take advantage of your opportunities, because there's going to be some. Florida would like to have that figured out before this 4 stretch. So a huge weekend for Dale Thomas, Hayden Yost, Jalen Guy, Michael Robertson, and maybe Armando Albert. You just can't listen. If you're the defensive guy who's going to hit a little bit. You can't make 2 errors when you get chances to start.
Got to make the most of your opportunities. Or Kevin will find somebody else.
Yeah.
As we know, Gators back on the diamond Friday at 7 p.m. At Missouri. That game is going to be on SEC Network Plus as well as the other 2. So make sure you're following Nick's coverage at Gators Online, and make sure you're following our coverage as well Saturday from the scrimmage. We will have another intel report to let you know some of the top plays and moments and things that we learned. And also, before we get out of here, shout out to Portal God Todd. He and his staff are getting busy in the portal. If you've been following along at Gators Online, and Joe Tipton and Jamie Shaw are doing a great job staying on top of that. The Gators at this time have 3 top 25 transfers nationally that are scheduled to take official visits to Florida this month. 1 point guard and 2 power forwards. So Gators looking to replace Zion Pullen and Tyree Samuel, and got to think that the production those guys had is helping attract some transfers of that caliber. So we will be monitoring that as those visits get closer. Nick is going to stay on top of baseball, and obviously we got a huge weekend in the Swamp, not only for the scrimmage, but also, when there's a scrimmage, there's going to be recruiting visits. So Corey and Keith will have you guys covered on all that. Make sure you subscribe. If you're not, you can get in the door for just $1 to check us out, and you will not regret it. So we will be back next week to let you know how that scrimmage went and how the Gators are preparing for the Orange and Blue game, which will be Saturday, April 13th, back in the Swamp at 1 p.m. So next time we see you guys, it will be to preview the Orange and Blue game. So we'll see you guys then. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach.